Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, so we are recording. Yes, thanks, Rick. Thanks for reminding me. I had forgotten. So yeah, my name is Phil Boise. I'm Director of Cultural Connections. So we mainly do training and coaching in the emotional and cultural intelligence area. And we run conversations like this because we believe in the power of story to change the world. So, so here we're about changing the world one conversation at a time. Today, let me bring up the PowerPoint. I'm going to share the screen with you. Just a second here. Just a second. I'm going to share the screen just to start with, and whoops, I'll just go back to the beginning. So today I've named this story with conversation with Ana today, the breath of life, a story of courage, resilience and survival. And this is the second story in this series. We spoke with Esmatullah Nouri, an Afghani refugee, recently as part of Refugee Week. But today I'm speaking with Ana Ruiz, who's a friend and a former colleague of mine. And so, yes, this is a story of courage, resilience and survival. And I thought these stories are just perfect for our time at the moment, given that we're all being asked to call upon our reserves of courage, resilience and survival at this particular time. Before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that up here in the mountains where I'm presenting this from, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gundungurra and the Darug people. And I want to acknowledge Aboriginal ancestors, past and present, and any Aboriginal people who might be on this conversation today. I would say welcome. So as I mentioned, we'll go for, there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. So while I'm chatting with Ana, I just asked you to keep your microphones on mute. That would be much appreciated, so we don't get any background noise. Now, let me just tell you briefly a little bit about Ana. Ana grew up in Bogota in Colombia as an only child, but in the company of her cousins, who she used to spend a lot of time with. And she grew up at a time when Colombia was a fairly dangerous sort of place. In the 70s and 80s, when you had it was the time of Pablo Escobar and not one but two terrorist organizations at that time, Ana, wasn't it? The FARC and the ELN.
Correct.
There were two terrorist organizations. So Ana, I guess, living in Colombia, learnt a lot about resilience, just growing up in that countries. And she went to university, studied political science, negotiations, international relations, and was an exchange student in the US for a while. And I mentioned that because that's really important, the fact that Ana has always been focused, had a global focus and an international travel focus. And that particular point is going to become really interesting and important as we get into the talk later on. She ended up coming to Australia with partner Rick in 2003. For Rick's study, and she stayed. So that's just a little introduction. But what I really want to do to start the conversation today is, sorry, let me just is I want to show a video about Ana's operation that she had, what she went through. And I would just mention to people, sorry, I'll get that off the screen. Sorry, I would just mention to people that the video we're going to show, it might make some people a little bit squirmish because it is some very graphic shots of Ana's lung transplant. So if you're a little bit squeamish about seeing inside another human being, inside Ana in this instance, then I'm just issuing a warning at this point. But I would also just encourage you to watch this, because this is quite an amazing documentary by National Geographic, documenting Ana's surgery and explaining what the lung condition was and the surgery was all about. So it's a really fantastic video. I find that I have a cry every time I watch it. So I would also recommend that you have a box of tissues handy as well. It's not a long video. It's about 10 minutes. And so we're going to show the video, and then we're going to go into the conversation from that point. Now, I'm just checking. Can you all see the video on the screen? Or I need to share again?
I don't see it. Maybe you need to share again.
Okay, here we go.
I'm not seeing it either.
All right, can you see it? Can you see it now?
You show, close the PowerPoint first. The PowerPoint's interfering. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the PowerPoint is like frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So maybe close the PowerPoint.
Okay, all right. All right. Put that down there.
Yeah, it's not closing properly.
Is it? Okay. All right, just a second.
But you can't minimize it. Maybe you might have to close it.
Sorry.
You have to close it instead of minimize it.
Okay.
Bring it up again and then close it.
Okay. All right, just a second. Okay. So sorry about this, folks. Let me get this.
This is the way of developing adaptability here.
Yeah.
Move it over and close it.
Stop share.
Okay.
Screen share. Okay. Let me get that. Okay. Let's. Okay. I think we're there, folks. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make that a full screen. And so we're just going to watch this as a way of you understanding what Ana went through.
Thank you so much to all the team.
Fantastic donor for you.
Volume?
Yeah,
nice volume.
And this morning, the phone
Phil, I think it needs a little bit more volume from the source.
telling me that they were calling from St. Vincent's Hospital and that they had a new set of lungs and that I have to be here in. I'm like over the moon because I've been literally waiting for this for the past 9 years. Super exciting.
Ana needs a lung transplant because she has a pulmonary lymphangiomyomatosis, which is essentially a condition where the lungs start to develop small cysts throughout it, and these cysts take over normal lung tissue and essentially ruin her lungs.
I can't remember what it feels like to actually take a deep breath and feel that my lungs are full. And you struggle with every move, even taking a shower, even just sitting down, even sometimes laying at night. I wake up because I can't breathe properly.
So this is a CT scan of Ana, who's about to have a double lung transplant. And as you can see here, her disease is severe. The heart is normal size for Ana, but the lungs are overinflated. You can see that where normal lung tissue should reside, she's got these holes or cysts in her lungs. And in the end, they don't function. She can't breathe, she needs oxygen. And then without a lung transplant, she'd die.
Although I don't know who the donor is, I get emotional. Because I am super, super grateful.
We've been waiting for this for years, and we know what it is. But now it's the moment. You're kind of anxious all the time. Congratulations once again.
Thanks. Thank you. That's such an amazing gift.
Yes, good luck, eh?
Thank you so much in advance.
Buenas noches.
Gracias.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Oh, it's so hard to keep cool. Like a cucumber at this moment. I'm trying to meditate.
Very rare lung condition. We each year do about 1, maybe 2 patients in similar situation to her. So what she needs to undergo is actually a very, very rare event for us here at St Vincent's Hospital. Anna is going to go up to the operating theatre. In the meantime, our donor team is travelling to the donor hospital.
So we're taking Anna down to the anaesthetic bay now.
So I make sure that the donor surgeon is happy with their operation, that the donor lungs have been carefully taken out of the donor, and at that point, I start the operation. The aim with the operation today, hopefully, is to avoid cutting the chest bone. And so this will give her a better functional result. At least when she coughs, she'll just have the stability of her chest wall. And it'll allow her, hopefully, to get up and about sooner. We've made an incision on the right side of the chest, and we're going to obtain access to the heart through this incision. And once we're on the heart-lung machine, we can start to remove the right and left lungs. So we put in a retractor. They're a bit brutal, these retractors, but there's a lot that needs to go in this side, so... Oh, heavens. The lungs are so overinflated, I can barely see the heart because the lungs are in the way. To do the operation, we use the heart-lung machine, which means that we thin her blood and we put some big plastic pipes into her aorta and into the heart itself. And this is a major undertaking and a major insult for her body, even though she is very young.
So it looks good.
We're on full cut-out pulmonary bypass, so we're now going to cut out the right lung. And really, I mean, this is very easy because there's not much substance to these lungs. They're very delicate and the tissues are just very fragile. There we go, we're struggling to get it out. And oh no, here we are. Well, so you can see it's got multiple cysts all over it. Hey Claude, do you reckon you can find out where the organs are?
Hi, it's Claude. I was wondering where you're at the moment.
We're probably about
Half an hour away. Okay, I'll let Emily know.
The other thing really important about transplantation is time. The organs essentially at the moment are sitting in an esky on ice. They've got no blood supply to it, and cells inevitably, even though they are hibernating to a certain extent, they do start dying. So it's really important for donor organs to get back to the recipient as fast as possible. I can't get it out again. There we go. There's the left lung. It's full of cysts. Looks like it's covered in warts, really. Okay, right. So Anna is currently lying here on the operating table. She has a heart and no lungs. She is now being kept alive by the heart-lung machine. It is bleeding, you have to stop it. The main risk for Anna having a lung transplant is actually not making it through the transplant. Her operation is essentially a 1 in 10 chance of something bad happening to her during the operation. So as I'm prepping and draping Anna, the donor surgical team has jumped into the police car and they get a green light corridor back to St Vincent's, which essentially means that all the traffic lights get turned to green on the way back here. And it also means that I have to start moving pretty quickly and get everything ready so that when the esky comes into the operating theatre, I can take the donor lungs out of the esky and start stitching them in straight away.
Just letting the staff know in theatre that we're coming up.
The lungs, we like to have the lungs stitched in really within 6 hours. And we can see from our data with regards to patient survival, the faster you can get the lungs stitched into someone, the better, really. Everything's ready at the operating table and we just need to grab the lungs now, and then they've been well packaged, they're nice and cold. So here we go, beautiful soft lungs. So hopefully I can do these lungs justice by stitching them in perfectly. Okay. It's like everything, if you set it up well, it's relatively easy. She's got lots of room, not a lot of fat. So we can sort of see what we're doing here. Feel the heart again. So we're just letting the air get out of the lungs and out of the left atrium, letting it sort of fill up. So the lung is being perfused on the right-hand side. Empty out.
Emptying out.
So that's one side in. Now we just have to do the other side. Okay, the left lung is now perfused. And as soon as we have an airway, we'll start ventilating. That's the heart here. There we go. The lungs are starting to come up, starting to gently re-expand. And as they come up, we look at all the areas of collapse start to disappear. And then we gently feel the lungs and make sure that the lower lobes are coming up. Lovely, okay, that looks good. Once we're happy that the lungs have expanded, we go onto the ventilator and then we'll fill the heart and let the heart start working again. Heart starts up, the ECG looks great, the blood pressure is fantastic, and you think, oh my goodness, things are moving along quickly. I don't have to stand here anymore. We can take the patient off bypass and away we go. Fantastic. Sometimes after doing a very big operation, the fact that your phone goes off and it's your 6-year-old on the phone who wants to talk about an issue with Lego or with puppy dogs is a good circuit breaker for everything.
Yes, you can have a look at it.
When Anna wakes up, after the initial euphoria of being able to discover she can finally breathe, next becomes a balance of using your new lungs and making sure they don't collapse and coping with the pain. How's she doing? Hi Anna, I'm Emily, I'm the surgeon.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Really appreciate it.
That's good. We worked till late last night, but it's a beautiful set of lungs and they look fantastic at the end. So it's great to see they got the breathing tube out.
Yeah.
How's the pain? Unbelievable?
Real.
Yeah. We managed just to do 2 little cuts under the breast tissue.
Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully that'll heal up nicely. Okay.
I'm so grateful.
Oh, that's all right. You're doing all the hard work. Plenty more hard work still to come. Okay, good.
Thank you. I feel fantastic. It's amazing. 3 months ago, I had the surgery, and by now I can wake up and I can take a shower and I can feel normal and I can feel alive. I just feel super grateful and very, very thankful. It's amazing that they have the technology nowadays, thank God, to give me new lungs. Kiss for daddy.
Okay.
A kiss for mommy.
Come on.
Kissy.
Mm.
Wow, I'm doing breathing exercises here.
So, so what's it like to look at that again? I know you've seen it a few times, but what's it like to look at that surgery and that whole process for you?
I don't know. I think, well, thank God I had my box of tissues, because every time I look at it, I try never to look at it, by the way, because I know it causes a lot of mixed feelings naturally. On the one side, it has a little bit of a post-traumatic stress syndrome type sensation, where I go back to all of those feelings of fear and anxiety and uncertainty and so on. But what is always the most important feeling when I see that is the sense of gratitude, I think. I really, looking at Dr. Emily Granger, my surgeon, and all the doctors and the nurses and all of the sort of planets that aligned in the universe to make this happen.
Yes, I know. I was amazed about the green lights for the police
corridor. I actually never learned anything about it until I watched the documentary. I didn't even know that was the case. And you think about all the infrastructure and all of those people that you never meet that are behind the scenes enabling this to happen. It almost feels like I have like an army of angels, protecting me and ensuring that this happens. So I just, it just fills my heart with gratitude when I go back and look at that moment, and not only that moment, but what came after that moment, what happened before that moment as well. Being in Australia with this amazing medical system, it's just gratitude, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to thank you for sharing that, being prepared to share that, because I don't think many people sort of reveal quite so much about themselves, of themselves, as you just did in that video, both, I mean, in terms of the raw emotions, particularly at the beginning there, where you're preparing for surgery and so on, and allowing us to literally see inside you.
Yeah, literally.
Okay, so thank you for that. That's very generous of you. So just talk a little bit about that. I mean, is it a hard thing for you to do, to have other people seeing that video?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a very private person. And when the hospital approached me right before the surgery, I didn't know that they were going to do this. I was waiting to go into the theater room, actually, when they approached me and asked me if I wanted to be part of this series Miracle Hospital that they were doing, featuring different patients, and that I was chosen to be one of them. That, they asked me if I wanted to participate. And I thought, this is not time for privacy, because this is a really good story. It can be really empowering to share stories, as you just said, and what you do through these conversations, because there will be people in difficult situations, not necessarily with a health condition necessarily, but going through a really tough time. And when they see that someone else has gone through something really overwhelming, and that they have come through, and that they are out, and they have overcome these obstacles, it can be encouraging, and it ignites a sense of hope, obviously, for people. So my motivation behind that was being able to inspire other people who were really low at one moment in their lives to think about this story and see, well, she made it. She was resilient. She persevered and got through, and acknowledged, obviously, that there were so many people that enabled that to happen. Obviously, it wasn't not me. It was a team of so many people behind.
We will be exploring some of the resilience strategies that you use to get through this, and as we go on and we talk about your experience, and we're going to backtrack a little bit. Now, you grew up in Colombia, and you're always aware that you had breathing problems, and you thought you were diagnosed with asthma, and you used to struggle to walking uphill to university in Colombia. And you had situations where you were asked to travel overseas, and the travel really knocked you around to the point where you ended up in hospital with pneumonia. And so you're thinking to yourself, this is not just asthma, and there's something going on here. So you take yourself off to a lung specialist in 2006. And I'd like you to share with us what she told you.
Sure. Her name was Emily as well. You know, I was diagnosed by an Emily, and my surgeon was Emily. So there must be something here about that name. She was the first doctor that thought about doing a certain set of medical exams that nobody ever thought about before. And when I went to her room to get the diagnosis, or you know, I was thinking that I wasn't going to get a diagnosis. I thought when I stepped into her room that she was going to tell me, Anna, drink this medicine or take these vitamins or whatever it was. This is the magic formula. You will get better as you undergo this treatment. And this was my attitude in which I came in that morning. I remember it was 8 a.m. right before a meeting I had in Macquarie University. And she said, well, Anna, you better take a seat. And then she explained that I had this disease, that it was called LAM in an abbreviation, and that it had 3 connotations. The first one was that I could not bear a child if I wanted to have a baby. And that was one of the reasons why I went to her, is because I wanted to sort out my health before we started thinking about having babies. Number 2, I could not travel on a plane. That was absolutely devastating because in theory, my lungs, the cyst in my lungs could pop and then the air would get into the lung cavity, causing a heart attack. So takeoff and landing, I couldn't. So I could not travel at all on a plane or in a submarine. And number 3, it was a very rare disease that would not, they have no cause for, and that there was absolutely no treatment for, and that I could all of a sudden just go downhill or keep sort of stable throughout some time. It was only 55 women in Australia, I remember when she told me, and there was not a lot known about that. So my first reaction to that was like, okay, can I have new lungs? You know, that was, I am a problem solver. I think that it's just embedded in my DNA, that I was just like, can I have new lungs? And then they go, well, no, here in Australia, we don't do a lung transplant until you cannot walk 100 meters. It was like literally from here to the door of where we were sitting.
So a few meters, Anna? 5 meters or something?
No, it was 100 meters, I think.
100 meters, okay.
Something, or it was something short, but anyway, she said from here to the door. Yeah, whatever. Maybe it was 5 meters, right? And you're not in that situation yet, although you have only 18% lung capacity. I was like, oh my God.
18%.
Yeah, at that time. And then she said, you know, it can really go really downhill and you die. So I was 33 and she was telling me that, you know, I could not have a baby. I could not get on a plane. All my work since I graduated from university was travel based. And that was one of my priorities in life. And number 3, well, you know, I could die tomorrow. So it was pretty confronting to hear that, instead of, you know, here is your solution to your problem.
So you would have gone home, and what was the conversation with Rick that night after you've just been given that information?
Well, I actually called him after I stepped out of her room, and I was crying. You know, I was in tears, and I was like, but it was more than the diagnosis. It was because of the fact that there was no solution. You know, I think that hopelessness was what was making me so sad and so worried, I guess. I think that after we had this conversation where we cried, I obviously called my boss and said, I cannot be in that meeting today. I'm not in a mental state. I'll explain later. It was really good. She didn't push me to explain anything. She said, yep, take your day off. It was a Friday, thank God. And then I went home, but I didn't tell my mom or my family or anyone, because I think that I really needed to go like introspect mode and really like clear my ideas and organize my ideas a little bit before I delivered the news to those, that love me. And so it was really, really challenging that day. Now that I remember that day, and I started tearing up because it was even worse than the surgery, because the surgery had that element of hope. Versus that day when there was, it was the most hopeless conversation I've ever had in my lifetime.
And it was that thing about the fact that you could die. I mean, that's
Yeah, when you're so young.
that must be a horrifying thing to be
And we
faced
want
with.
to have a family, and like you're on this time in your life when you're thinking about expansion and growth
Yeah.
and hope and future. And
Mm.
the future conversation was no longer there. So I think that it was really mining to the spirit, the soul.
Yeah. Okay. So, not being able to travel was particularly devastating for you, wasn't it? I mean, obviously the news that you could die was horrifying, but also the fact that you couldn't travel. I mean, that was like taking your sort of life's purpose and your spirit away.
True. That is the best way to describe it. Yeah, it was because travel has always been such an important part of my identity, and I don't mean how people see it, but how I see myself in this world. And that it was just like removing like a big chunk of me. There are many people who do not need to travel and they're happy being at home and or in their own environment, and that makes them thrive. But I am the opposite, so it was like taking a big chunk of me.
But the one thing that you felt that you could solve was the issue of having children, and you made a decision to adopt a child in Colombia.
That is really interesting, because from the 3 news, like the 3 points she delivered that day, well, obviously it was horrifying to know that I could die any moment. So that was number 1. Number 2 was I couldn't travel. But the last one was not having a biological child, because Rick and I, my husband and I, had talked about it even before we got married. We always wanted to adopt a child. So that was never a plan B for us. We actually wanted to have a biological and an adopted child. So it was basically just, it was action mode. Okay, time for adoption. It was not taking my sleep away, or, it was, for me, thankfully, we already had talked about it. We already wanted to do it. So it was, okay, it's time to get that started.
So, but by this stage, you've sort of come to terms with the fact that you could, die soon. So you had to take action straight away.
And that was the problem, because obviously, if you're going to die, probably you're not in the list of eligibility to be a mom, an adopted mom.
Yeah. So that must have been an interesting conversation with Rick around that, given the possibility, the worst case scenario.
Yes, definitely. We talked a lot about it. The good thing is that Rick is like the best partner I could have had in the adversity that I have gone through, because he is not, the Latin drama gene he didn't inherit. He's down to earth. He's very rational. He's very action mode as well, and he's very logical. So I think that helped me a lot, because he kept me grounded. And we never really talked about that I could die. I mean, the only things that I did about that's Emilio, my son. Rick, I think it's a little bit distracting to have him there. Anyway, hi, Emilio. What I was going to say is that we never talked about really dying. The only thing I did that was really practical was that I had all things sorted. So I told my 3 best friends, as hard as it was for them, look, if this happens, this is what you have to do. So they had a plan. I am a planner. So it just really helped. It was a coping mechanism. So I said, well, if I go, this is what I want you to do. And I never told that to Rick or my mom, of course, because it was too overwhelming.
So, Anna, I know you're really a whiz with a Gantt chart. Did you put together a Gantt chart?
I could have, but I did have Excel spreadsheets for some of the things.
Yeah, for those of you, I worked with Ana at Macquarie University, and Ana was a project manager for our volunteering program, sending students overseas. And I was just amazed. Ana was really a whiz with a Gantt chart. So,
anyway, but for example, I did that, or I thought about the testament as well, things like that. But our conversations with Rick were always, we're going to get through this. We never talked about, like, we're never going to go. It was never a possible scenario for us.
Okay. So you've decided to adopt a child in Colombia, and I remember you coming to me at Macquarie University, and look, I knew you had a bad lung disease, but I didn't know how bad it was. You didn't tell me quite how bad it was. And I remember you telling me you were going overseas to Colombia to pick up Emilio.
Mhm.
And I remember being absolutely overjoyed and incredibly and a little bit disappointed at the time, because I thought, oh my God, I'm losing Anna. How am I going to survive? Because you were so instrumental in the program we were working on. But it was a very, very complicated thing and a courageous thing to make a decision to go to Colombia to pick up Emilio, because your doctor had said that you couldn't fly.
Correct.
Now, you talked about angels intervening, and an angel appeared. Can you
Yes.
talk about that and how that adoption happened? Because it's quite an amazing story.
It is an amazing story. It really restores your faith in humankind. So my lung specialist, who, by the way, Dr. Deborah Yates, she is the most amazing human being. She was with me throughout 12 years of support before the transplant. She talked to the head of the transplant department and said, of St. Vincent's Hospital, the head of the emergency unit in St. Vincent's Hospital, and said to him, I have a patient and she needs to get to the other side of the world on a plane, but she has this disease, which, potentially she could die on that flight. We need an escort that is really qualified and that could help her get to the other side safely. And there was this doctor called Gonzalo Aguirre Barrena. He's originally from Argentina. He's become a really good friend, and I didn't know him. And the head of the emergency unit saw him passing by as Debbie was telling him the story. And he said, Gonzalo, come. You are an expert in thoracic medicine. You are in the emergency unit, so you can deal with emergencies, because they only had like 5 minutes to save me if I was up in the air and this pneumothorax happened. Would you be willing to go with Ana to Colombia? I mean, this is a person that doesn't know me. He knows nothing about anything. And he said, oh, let me think about it. On its own, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, this guy is an angel. And then he went home and he said, I have to consult with my wife, who's the other angel. And she said, you have to do this. I mean, you have to help this family. And between, the both of them made the decision. My lung specialist calls me the following day. I was looking for cargo companies to take me to Colombia, by the way, but nobody could take, or cruise ships, nobody could take me at that time in the year. And we only had, I think it was only 6 weeks or 4 weeks to arrive. You will recall that I gave you a very short notice.
Yeah, I know, yes.
we gave you 4 weeks notice, not 9 months of pregnancy. And so obviously we had to get there because it was a legislation that we had to be in the court present, both mom and dad. Otherwise, we would have lost the 4 years of application for the adoption. And Gonzalo, so my specialist calls me one night. Actually, my friends from Macquarie were giving me a farewell party, and I didn't even know how I was going to get to Colombia by then. And at that night, before I go into the restaurant where they were celebrating, she calls me and she says, there's this doctor, you can call him now. He doesn't want you to pay him 1 cent. You just have to pay for the flights, naturally, for him to go and come back. And he's willing to take you. If he goes, I approve for you to go. Because obviously, Debbie, my specialist, had to give a clearance for Qantas and all of that. So that's how it all happened. So I called Gonzalo and I just couldn't believe it. And I was so grateful. I said, thank you so much. I would love to meet you, take you out for dinner. I remember he said, no, I don't want to get to know you because then I lose my objectivity as a doctor. If I am really attached to you and I have to save your life, it will make it really difficult for me. Obviously, being Latin, we insisted so much. He ended up going for dinner with his wife for us, but we tried not to be too warm.
Uh-huh.
But we were so grateful, honestly. And yeah, he came with us. He came with us on the plane.
Yeah, and returned as well.
And returned as well. So he came with us. He dropped us off with my mom and Rick, and we stayed in Colombia for 10 weeks. And then when the whole court process and all of the proceedings, legal proceedings happened, then we called him, okay, Gonzalo, we're ready. He went back to Colombia to pick me up and brought me here.
Okay.
His boss was another angel. He had a company of medical escorts, and he lent the equipment. All of the equipment of all the people in St. Vincent's Hospital had to do of forms and tests.
Yeah.
So amazing.
And on the plane, they had to alert other doctors in the plane. There was a whole team of people ready to jump to your aid if necessary. Yeah.
Correct. That was such an amazing surprise. That happened with Qantas, and they called Gonzalo as soon as we went into the plane and said, look, we want to have a chat to you. And he went, and there were about 8, I think, or 7. I can remember how many doctors in the plane that were traveling, coincidentally, and that Qantas had pre-identified, and they had like a medical meeting before so that they could plan out who can help with what in the event that the worst case scenario come along.
So I'm just imagining being in your situation, and you know that takeoff and landing are the crucial times. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind as you're taking off, and then as you're landing? I mean, what are you thinking?
It was unreal. It was so scary. But I used the 4-7-8 breathing exercises that I had learned in my free guided meditation. I honestly did that. And I was using the breathing exercises just to calm down, especially during takeoff. And obviously then landing, I did that. And I was holding on to Gonzalo and squeezing his hand so badly that he was like bruised afterwards. But I was trying to keep calm because and I can talk about strategies later, but I think that mindset, that how you are thinking about things as they happen and how you're reacting is definitely what got me through all of these situations, because I was, okay, what can I control here? I cannot control if my cysts pop. I cannot control if I'm about to die. I've done all the mitigation strategies, our risk management strategies.
Risk management strategy.
The matrix.
You've done the matrix, yeah.
The risk management matrix. Gonzalo was there, the equipment was there, the 7 other doctors were there. Besides that, the only thing I could control was my mind. So, that I focused on that, on not having these horrible thoughts of something is going to happen. I always thought everything is going to be all right. And I just tried to self-calm.
And given what you'd gone through to get there, that first moment with Emilio must have been so special.
It was so special. It was amazing. Just holding him, it was like, okay, this is the price. It was worth all of these years and everything that we went through. It was like getting the most huge award after a marathon.
Okay, so you come back to Australia, you settle back in, and you're put on a wait list for a lung transplant, which is fantastic news, yeah?
Yep.
Very exciting news.
It was so exciting.
Yeah. But they couldn't give you a guarantee of when it was going to happen, but you were on a waiting list. There could be any number of years, yeah?
Well, they tell you between months or between days, and 8 years, I think, was the average of waiting.
Yep.
Up to 11 years. So it was a huge time frame. It was not like within the next year. It was like 8 to 11 years. And it was always the conversation of, but you might not make it, because my lung capacity was so low that obviously I couldn't wait 8 years or anything. It was literally, I could only wait a couple of years. Nobody knew really, but it was like very difficult to survive for a long time. So that's what they told me, that the base case scenario would probably be 11 months. Okay. So I was like sort of prepared for the 11-month time frame in the best case scenario.
And then there was a slight obstacle that came in the way, Ana. You were diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Yes, now I can laugh about it. But when that happened...
the angels seem to be deserting you at this point. Yes,
it's like, where are you? Come, crowd, army.
And as a result, you're taken off a wait list because they can't have a cancer patient on a wait list for a transplant.
Indeed. So they put me on the waiting list on December, and then my specialist called me on March the following year. So it had only been about 3 months. And I was so hopeful during those 3 months because it had completely changed my spectrum, right? It was like I was on action mode. I was like, okay, we're solving this. I was no longer, oh my God, what is going to happen? So I was really like in good spirits. But when they gave me the diagnosis of cancer, and she said that the impact to that was that they were going to remove me from the wait list. What hit me the worst was not the cancer news, but it was the removing me from the wait list news. That was absolutely devastating because it was like they just remove hope altogether from you right there. And there you have two problems now, but you have no hope to cope with any of them.
So how do you cope with that? How do you cope with not that sense of hopelessness?
Well, first, when she told me that I had cancer, as scary as it was, my question again was, does it have any solution? And she said, yes, there's therapy. That we can do surgery. You're booked for next Tuesday, she said. And she didn't ask me, you're booked for next Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then we will do therapy. And what is the likelihood of survival? She told me, oh, good. Okay, that was not a problem anymore. It was a challenge that we have to overcome. But the removing me from the wait list, how I coped with that was really hard. Like the first thing, I kept on thinking about my main motivator. And my main motivator to get through all of that was Emilio. To be honest, it was like, okay, I want to get through the other side because I want to play with him. I want to see him grow. I want to be there for him. So I think that having clarity on motivation is the one thing that can get you through really difficult moments. Also, my mindset as well. You have to draw on it as well. So, you know, that famous saying of, it doesn't matter what happens to you, but how you react to it is what matters. So it was, okay, how am I going to react this? And what can I control of these? I cannot control what is happening, but I can control how, not feeling like a victim, feeling more like I have ownership of these and living my life the best way I can. So I think that helped me. Guided meditations helped me throughout, before, during, after. I'm still meditating as much as I can. Really good talks. For example, I discovered, I went into a self-discovery path and into a expansion of knowledge path because I'm very logical as well. I wanted science and other experiences to draw from that and to learn from that and see what I could apply. So for example, there was a TED talk about vulnerability that really helped me through that time.
Yeah.
And also humor. I think humor was key in these situations. And we can talk about one of the experiences when I was in therapy, radiotherapy. But, you know, choosing humor over drama, always consciously, I think that helped me a lot.
What story was that you wanted to talk about that was funny?
Well, for example, when they were giving me the radioactive therapy post the surgery of my thyroid, the removal of the thyroid, I was put into this room in the hospital, a very removed section of the hospital, and in a room that was high security, and it had this do not trespass, danger, radioactivity. Nobody, not even the nurses, could go in. They would just, you know, like pull the foot under the door. So it was really interesting because all of a sudden this guy that was dressing up like an astronaut with helmet and gloves and all comes in with this box.
Like he was sort of, you know, walking into a Maralinga sort of nuclear explosion test site or something.
Nuclear exposure, exactly like that. Huge. I couldn't even see his eyes or anything. Maybe it was a woman. I still don't know. Walked in and had this huge box on a really, you know, very safe surface. And the box was like a Pandora box that was a box inside a box inside a box. And the material was as if it could survive an explosion. And it finally opens the last box and there was this pill. And there I was just with my PJs, no helmet, no gloves, no mask, no anything. And he says, open your mouth. He was expecting me to swallow that when he went, above and beyond to protect himself.
Yes.
That, and it was really all over my body. So at that moment, I was like, oh my God. But as soon as he walked in and I was already radiating, I logged into my WhatsApp of the Latin Mafia, which are my friends from actually from Macquarie University, from Latin background, that we have really close friendship of 17 years now. And they were all there. How are you going? And super uplifting. And instead of talking about what could go wrong or anything like that, we were talking about all of the superpowers that I was going to gain as a consequence of radioactivity. So it was like a magic pill. It was like my Lara Croft moment, maybe I come back with muscles that I never had and superpowers. And, all the conversation, it was 24/7. They would literally write to me in the middle of the night, how are you going? A friend actually came over and with my favorite Thai food, Carolina Rodriguez, with my favorite Thai food. And she obviously, the doctors were like, you cannot go in. And, everyone was screaming, get out of that area, restriction. And there she was with the Thai food.
And the sirens were going off, security breach, contamination zone.
The sirens went off because as you pass a certain point, the lights and sirens start going on. So I was, what's going on outside? And there was Caro, oh, I'm bringing you Thai food. I'm like, get out of here. So the nurses later gave me the Thai food under the door. It was hilarious. So I think that, I could have been there, like really scared and crying out until the next day. But I think that this humor and this friendship and this support really pulled me out of it in a different way.
So there's all this, physical and psychological adaptation that you're having to go through, but there's also the reality that you've got 18% lung capacity. Now I've been an asthmatic kid, and I sort of, nothing compared to your experience, but I know what it's like not to be able to breathe, and that's your experience every day.
Yes.
So how do you get through a day on 18% lung capacity? Because that's, to me, knowing what that feels like, I just can't imagine that being your experience every day.
I don't know. I think that all humans are prone to adapting and just activating that survival mode somehow, whether that is a very explicit thought or whether it just happens. But it happened to me, I just activated that survival mode, and that although I was in that in that situation of breathlessness and entrapment in my body.
You talk about that a lot. I know you in conversations we had, you said the fundamental feeling that you had amongst the uncertainty, the fear, and all of that was this feeling of entrapment.
Yes, I always described it or self-describe that as, and when people ask me, I feel trapped in my body and in this beautiful island in many ways. But the way that I dealt with it was just, I hit the point of acceptance. I literally went through all of the phases of grief. So, I was really anger, and I went through sadness and depression, and I went through trying to negotiate with my doctors and with myself. And then until finally I hit acceptance. And I think that when I finally hit the acceptance stage, then I just started to deal with it in a much better way. And tapping into these breathing techniques and tapping into my mind. My mind was my biggest friend and my closest friend, because it's a very lonely journey. Like, you see all of your friends going out dancing, especially, like I have a husband that is a rock. Like, he doesn't even get a cold symptoms, nothing. He's always he's super active. And so, like, inevitably you start thinking, oh, shit, like I can't even do anything. And all of these people are enjoying their life. So I really had to shift my thinking a lot from I can't, and I cannot breathe, and I cannot do all of these activities, and I cannot do this, to, okay, what is it that I can do? And what I could, I resourced to my memories, I resourced to the love and friendship and family that I had, and the gratitude was a huge aspect that got me through every day, literally, because I used to put on my mobile every day. I put 3 things in my mobile that I was grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
So it, you know, I didn't focus on what I didn't have. I focused on what I did have. And I think this mindset was essential to coping with that every day.
So the magical day comes, Ana, and they say, okay, are you ready to go? We have lungs for you. And we saw that amazing documentary. And there's a lot to talk about in that documentary. I mean, the actual surgery itself is quite incredible. And I love seeing the way the lungs closed up when you started to breathe into those lungs. That's just amazing. But I was wondering, as you're sitting on the gurney, ready to go to the operating theatre, and you're obviously very drugged up, but I'm wondering.
No, I was not drugged up then. That was the problem.
Oh yeah, okay. So you're not drugged up then. That's right. You're not drugged up at that stage. And I'm thinking, what's going through Ana's mind? She's lying there and being wheeled into surgery, knowing that there is a chance you might not come out.
It's interesting because I was more worried about my mom and Emilio and Rick than about me. And obviously, you know, it's always about the impact and the connotations of that because, you know, if you go, well, you go, but then the people that stay is the worst. So I don't know. I was just, you notice, I just noticed when I saw the video again that I said, okay, I have to meditate. It's true. I was in that, I was will. I was like, okay, breathing technique, meditation, everything will go well. And mind, you know, focusing my thoughts on, we're going to get through visualization, basically. So I started thinking of the moment when I would wake up, and I started thinking about when I could finally walk and run, how I could run with Emilio and play football with him. I just started thinking about that, because if I thought about what I was just going to leave, it would have been excruciating. And obviously I started asking for meds. Please inject me now. That always helps when you don't have to think about it.
So you go through this amazing 6 hours of surgery, which just must be so devastating on the body, that they've opened you right up, and we saw them taking the lungs out. They've literally ripped the core out of you. I mean, you know, amazing to watch that. For me, it's just incredible. And I think to myself, God, what must be the pain like after that when you wake up from that? And what strategies did you use to cope with what must have been excruciating pain and discomfort?
Yes, I've never felt anything even close to that pain, really, like physically. And it was very hard to cope in the first 13 days because I didn't have my mind with me. And that was always my main coping mechanism, because with all the meds, it just gives you, what is it called? Delirium. That's a medical term. So you go into this hallucination path. And I lost 10 kilos in 13 days. So I was just like back to my bones. And so I didn't have like a strong body. I didn't have a mind, because the meds were, the painkillers were like all over the place, playing with my mind. So I think that in this first instance of the post-surgery with pain, what helped me a lot was definitely like practical things, like my mom. She arrived at 5 a.m, left at 11 p.m, was next to me throughout. She wouldn't abandon me. Sometimes they allow her to stay when I had these hallucinations that were really scary. So that's first, you know, support, your support network. I tapped into it. I embraced it. I just said, okay, I cannot be stoic at this time. I need someone here grounding me down. My mom and that love and that unconditional love, I think, really took me through. And back to my motivator, Emilio, projecting myself all the time, despite the pain.
So in the end, Ana, Emilio is your number one angel.
He's number one angel. And gratitude, you know, because I was thinking, there was a family of of the donor. There are all of these doctors, the surgeons and the doctors that were there, the nurses, and everyone that is fighting so much for me to be alive. It was almost like a responsibility, you know, to honor them and to get through it. So honestly, that sense of, you know, like that you are accountable, you know, like you have your life in your hands. Obviously, you know, I could have died, and you know, I couldn't control that, but whatever I could do to survive, I would.
So
And
you're doing it more for other people than for yourself, Ana, in a way.
at that point, when you're on survival mode, when it just life takes you to that core, you know, you're not in the aspirational realm anymore. You are down to survival mode. When it kicks, and yeah, I started thinking, okay, well, I owe these people to survive, because they just had an operation of 7 hours. Everyone did everything, even the traffic lights, to get
The whole city stopped for you, Ana.
stop for me, you know. Surgery is worth almost $1 million.
Yeah.
It's like I owe it even to the country, to the taxpayers, to, you know, like I have to survive. I was always thinking like that.
That's a powerful motivation.
It was really, and it was empowering. It was like a propelling force, you know, instead of, oh my God, what is going to happen, or what is the likelihood of survival. I was like, no, I'm going to make this, because I'm going to make them proud.
Psychologists talk about this notion of post-traumatic growth, and they talk about the fact that most people who go through traumatic experiences come out the other end a stronger person. The vast percentage of people who go through PTSD do, according to psychologists, and research that's been done. How much did this experience help you to grow as a person?
Incredibly, because being close to dying, or with that prospect of death, I think it makes you more reflective, absolutely grateful, because, you know, if we just go on a daily basis with not many challenges, we become very accustomed, and we take things for granted. So I think this experience really brought that gratitude up front on my cortex. And I became really resilient to that. You know, I could really apply all of these mechanisms to a lot of different situations in my life. So I think that I came out more resilient, more adaptable, and I can navigate the unknown in a better way. For example, now with COVID, and with, you know, at work, people are losing their jobs as well, and all of these situations create a lot of anxiety. Or, you know, my husband just was diagnosed with something that we need to tackle, although it's not anywhere near close to mine. But it really, you know, it just makes you more factual as well, a little bit more action mode, and it just makes you more practical, and you learn to reframe your inner dialogue all the time, and to
what do you mean? What do you mean by that? You reframe your inner dialogue.
Your narrative, instead of, okay, this is terrible, this is a misery, you know, why did this happen to me? I can't believe that I'm the one that got these, all of that stuff that you could think when you are in these moments of overwhelming fear, and obviously physical constraint. And I shifted the narrative to, okay, let's focus the energy on what I can do, and I am sort of building my own future. If I survive, if I am able to do all of this, then I want to do this. So I think that, you know, from victimization to empowerment, I think that's the shift.
And has it changed your view on life and your own life?
Absolutely. For example, and I think that is also challenging at times. I was discussing this with a friend last week, actually, because I said, well, the challenge that I have is because I've gone through all of these. I value every second and every day so much that I want to live it to my best, right? I have no toleration for, I'm not very tolerant with mediocrity anymore. with a mediocre life. Like I want to make it to the fullest. I want to live it to the fullest. I want to be valuable to society. I want to ensure that I am present for my son and for my friends and for my family. I want to travel. So I think that, you know, it definitely had that impact on me of seeing life different and changing my perspective. That is another thing. It completely changed my perspective, because every time that I was in really tough situation, I kept on thinking, okay, but I'm not in jail. I don't have to flee a country where there is a regime of horror. I'm not in a zone war. I have something to eat. I have a roof on top. So I always, like almost instantly and without thinking, I start thinking about, okay, what is it that I have? What is it that I'm grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
It changes your perspective.
And I'm just going to show a little slide here, Ana, that I'll let me just.
Hi, this is Emilio.
Here's Emilio. He's angel number one.
Number one. The entire time, my driving force.
And we can see there, Ana. You can see the images on the screen, can't you?
Okay.
Yeah. So we can see sheer joy there, Ana.
Yes, exactly.
I heard a really lovely expression the other day. I mentioned to you before we came on air that online that I heard a man talk about the fact that life in life you've got to chase your own joy.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you're chasing your joy right there. I can see.
I think so. It's really wise to, you know, not only in difficult times, but in general in life, to really think about how you can make of every day the most and take things a little bit lighter, even as hard as they can be.
Yep. And the other thing I think that we should mention before we sort of come to a close today, Ana, is the importance of organ donation, because if not for that generous person who donated the lungs, you might not be alive. Yes,
and their family. And it's, you know, after that journey, I'm really thinking, I would love for Australia to become like an opt-out country, where so you have opt-in and opt-out countries in the world. Yeah. Like Spain, for example, and incredibly Colombia, where I'm originally from, is an opt-out. So you are by default donating your organs unless you have a reason not to do it. But here in Australia is opt-in. You have to express your willingness to do it, but not only that, it's your family members. You have to communicate that to your family members, so that because they will be asked and they can override your decision. So I'm really thankful for the family of the donors, because it's such a hard time to be making those decisions. You're in the middle of loss and overwhelming loss and pain.
Did you ever meet them? Family that donated the lungs?
Here in Australia is closed, so what happens that you can't, but what happens is that Donor Australia, the organization, they have the details of the donors and the recipients. So they tell us, the recipients, if we want to write a letter, thank you letter to the donor family, but it's completely de-identified. So I did, and then if the donor family wishes to contact the recipients, then they are the ones who can do that. Right. I never did. I've never been fortunate to be able to thank them face to face, but I think that is such a confronting experience. It is dealing with the trauma of the loss, so I completely understand.
I'm thinking, Ana, we should leave a little bit of time for some questions that people might have. So I would like to thank you for sharing your life and your remarkable story with us today. Thank you.
No, thank you, Phil, for giving me the opportunity. And this is a thank you to everyone who enabled me to get to this point as well.
I'll stop sharing for a moment. And if people have some questions, you might like to unmute yourself and show your face on the video. and I'm sure Ana would be happy to answer them. So have we got any questions? I know, just let me go to the chat room. I haven't had a look, chance to, no, there's no questions in the chat room, but are there any questions that people have for Ana? Anybody like to ask a question? Yes, Mary Waterford.
Of course, it's not such a question as much as a comment, but or an appreciation, really, Ana. Thank you so much for sharing your story and also all the tools that you use to get yourself through this just extraordinary, challenging situation that life gave you, and your kind of appreciation of the angels and all of the things that came together to make your life work in the way that it does and continues to do. That it's a really beautiful thing that you've done to inspire us about, you know, appreciating every day and really being grateful for all that life gives you.
Thank you so much.
Very moving, Ana. Thank you.
I'm really grateful that you were here today and that you were open to hearing the story. So thank you so much.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say something to Ana. I am in total awe of the courage. And I don't believe in coincidence. I believe then things happen for a purpose. So I do believe then you have a message for the world. And you also inspired me in, I've never believed in organ donation, but now I understand. Then I might have to change my mind. I believe then your organs are with you to stay to the rest of your life. And, you know, and my husband is on the list, and I've never wanted to be on the list, but it certainly made me think twice about it. And I do believe then you have a big job to do, because you have been so protected, and like you're talking about all those angels and all those coincidences and all those people which have been there to protect you and with you along the way. You have a big job to do. Namaste.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, every time that I hear someone, and I've heard this so many times, when after seeing the video or hearing the story, people react that way. Oh, I think that I will start thinking about organ donation. I feel, well, this is my purpose, you know, this is fulfilled, and I feel really rewarded and thankful that you're considering it. I even had actually a Chinese colleague whose culture doesn't encourage organ donation, and he's, you know, been told since he was a baby that this is something that you take along into your next life. And obviously I respect all of the cultures and beliefs, but after he heard the story, because I was so private at, you know, in my workplace, nobody knew about this, and it was when I disappeared for 6 months and everybody started asking, where is Ana, by the way? And then people started hearing, with my permission, my boss started telling the story a little bit to those who asked. And after I came back to work, a couple of colleagues asked me, is it okay if we could watch the video together? So we had like a forum. They said, oh, could we have a lunch? I was like, this is not food time. But anyway, we can watch it together. And he said after that video, he said, you know what? My culture and all my life, I've been told this is the right approach. But after watching your story and knowing you in person, I think that I will go and change this, because they could have, you know, you can become a hero. You actually, it's your opportunity to become a hero. You can actually save 10 lives. So,
and it is wonderful to see the life force you have. You're so optimistic and so encouraging, and, you know, to think where you come from, only having 18% of your lungs, and to see the energy and the purpose you have, and your enthusiasm of life is wonderful. It's very uplifting. And especially in those times, you know, where people are having all those problems with depression and being locked in and not being able to breathe with that virus, and thinking about what you had to go through is just a wonderful, I won't say a story, it's a wonderful life you know, up to date than you've had. So good luck and keep your good message around.
Yeah, thank you. I think that you're right. You know, that message of being grateful and not even underestimate that you can breathe, you know, like that is something that most people take for granted, you know, and it's simple as that. We don't need material things, you know, just with the basics, you can be really happy. And the basics go down to even being able to breathe every day. So if you wake up and you can breathe, and if you can a little bit of love, you know, that's enough to be living your life the fullest on that day.
I remember going to the Canberra Museum and watching an old farmer talking about life, and he said, if I'm still breathing, I'm having a good day.
Exactly. It comes down to that.
Yes, it does. It does. Other people, comments or questions or yes, Angela.
Yeah, hi. Oh, Anna, wow. What a brave woman. I'm really like quite, I don't know, words fail me, but you're incredible. And so I suppose just coming back to that issue about opt-in and opt-out, I totally agree. I think Australia should have a system where we you know, it's you know, you're in a situation where your organs can be donated. It should be matter of fact, and then if you have an issue with that, you should be putting in some special you know, form or whatever. I completely agree, and I think that also it should be for blood donation as well in this country. We have a serious issue with blood availability for people, you know, with particularly rare blood types. But I suppose what I'm blown away by is this issue of health literacy and your amazing capacity, obviously, to keep up with all of the evidence that you're presented with along the way, which is phenomenal amount of information, and I'm sure your surgeons and your consultants and whatever guided you through that. But we in Australia, we've got such a low level of health literacy. And I was wondering if you had any ideas from your perspective. This is actually, I suppose, taking away from a very acute issue that you had that needed to be dealt with. But generally, when you talk to people about your kind of health conditions and the decisions that you had to make, which would have obviously involved a great amount of information that you had to amass, do you have any kind of suggestions about how to support other people through their understandings of the biomedical maze of information that's presented to you?
Oh, I love that you asked me that question. Because it's very useful, actually. When I was diagnosed with LAM and then with thyroid cancer, but I'll go back to that because it ended up not being LAM, so it ended up being another illness. But I didn't really find fact sheets and you know, support groups that were that could really guided me along. So I think, to answer your question, two things. You know, have really easy to digest information like fact sheets about a certain health condition, and a group of people that are, and that is the hardest thing, because you know, in LAM I found like a support group, but every time I talk to that group, I just, you know, I feel bad to say it, but I was so depressed. I came out so depressed. So, you know, monitoring those groups, those support groups, is also really important, and to have these health component, you know, a doctor or a specialist that could be part of monitoring those support groups or sessions. I think that the support group and the fact sheets and easily available information with FAQs and someone to ask. Every time that I had questions, I had to wait until my next appointment. I remember after I was diagnosed, I made a list of all the questions I had, and it was 102. I still remember. I must have that list somewhere. And obviously there were no answers for those questions, which was really interesting. Poor team who had to answer those questions, because we don't know. we don't know. You know, it was just like they could have just said, we don't know right from the start. But it's this anxiety that comes for all of the patients of any health condition when it is not very known, I guess, that it's the unknown. So tackling the unknown in a very easy to follow way, I think it's something that helps, and support groups. You know, it really helps to have. I've been contacted by a lot of people who are in a wait list or who have to decide whether they want to go on a wait list. It was never a decision for me. It was like, isn't this the only way? This is the only alternative, essentially. That's how I saw it. But no, there's the alternative of not doing it. But they would always contact me and say, but why did you do it? What motivated you to do it? So I think it has helped people, inform people when you have already gone through that. So connecting people after they have gone through this process, whatever the health condition is, it's really useful. I've been going also to groups in St. Vincent's Hospital to share stories. And after the transplant, we had groups where we shared stories of the ones who had the transplant, and we could get things out, and with other people that would really understand us. I think that support in whatever form it takes, it is essential, because I couldn't find it easily, and it would have helped me a lot throughout before.
Right.
And you're, yeah.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay.
How are we going? Any other questions? Or Hillary, I can see your hand up there.
I think, Hillary, you're muted.
Hillary, you have to unmute. Yep, there you go.
Right now. Okay, thank you, Anna. That was really inspirational. Just on the subject of organ donations, we used to have on our driving license application, a little box at the top right-hand corner which you could tick if you wanted to be an organ donor. But that has sadly gone, and I don't know why. That's a very retrograde step. I don't really knows. Perhaps that's something that should be lobbied for, to have that back again, or whether there was a legitimate reason, I don't know.
Absolutely. And also there was when you applied for a driver license, there used to be a tick box as well.
Yes.
And that is no longer there anymore. And I don't understand why it is no longer there anymore. So it's really hard to reach people. They literally have to go to a link on a website that nobody really knows. I mean, they would have to Google and find the link and register. But there is like no campaign to encourage people. I think that the ultimate solution is the opt out, because this is like a blanket and nobody has to think about it. These things have to make things easier for everyone. If you have to go through a process where you have to click on a link, find a link, and then say accept, and then, you know, this whole thing, it just, by being opt out, it really removes all of these issues of not getting out to people and not reaching people and all of that.
Mary.
Oh, I just wanted to say that the other day I was doing what I call my above ground will, i.e. giving, you know, permission to people if I can't speak for myself, that sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure, because part of the form I was filling out had the organ donation, and I'm pretty sure now you just go into mygov.com and it's there, I believe. I mean, I could have filled out this other form, and for various reasons, I'm in a slightly fluid situation as to my location in the next couple of years of my life. And so I'm waiting until that is clear before I finally sign up for organ donation. But I'm fairly sure it's now on mygov.com.
If you guys want, we can put it on your website, or you can send it to everyone, because I can easily send the link, and it takes 2 minutes to register or less. It's really quick. And I also prepared a list of strategies that have helped me, lessons learned sort of thing, like an Anna toolkit that Phil has in a PDF form. So if any of you, and most of those things we've touched on, but I always share it as well with people who ask me, how did you do it? Or how could you cope? Or is there anything that I could do to help me? And every situation is completely different. Of course, I acknowledge that, but if there are some elements of that then we can send the link to register for donation, and we can all become obviously influencers and letting other people know if they ask you, and have that, you know, ready.
I'm aware of the time, Ana, so I'd just like to share my screen one last time with everybody by way of saying, just letting people know that by being here today, that Cultural Connections supports girls' education, particularly in Peru, but we're also looking at other opportunities as well. So by coming here today, you're supporting a portion of the ticketing price through Humanitix, and also through Cultural Connections goes to support girls' education projects. So if you don't feel good enough about hearing Ana's story and feeling inspired, you should feel good about the fact that you're supporting girls' education. And this is a picture of a project that I was involved actually in setting up many years ago in Peru. These are Andean girls from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So you're supporting that project and other girls' education projects. So I just wanted to mention that. And I just wanted to mention that very quickly, the last two stories in this series, one's on Sunday, September 27, with Sarah Jane Stuzak. And Sarah Jane is amazing as well. Sarah Jane was a super active sportswoman. She went into surgery for routine back surgery, and she came out a paraplegic. So I'm going to be talking with her about how that happened and how she's coped with it. So she's got an amazing story to tell as well. On Sunday, November 29th, I'll be talking with Vicky McCauley. Look, she's a friend of mine, someone I've known for many years. Many years ago, her husband tried to kayak to New Zealand to be the first person to kayak solo, and he died within sight of land in New Zealand. It was a very tragic story. It happened many years ago now, and at the time it was quite widely publicised. It was devastating for Vicky because she thought her husband was bulletproof. And I'll be talking with her about that trip, about Andrew and what what he knew about resilience and survival and courage, and also Vicky's story of resilience, survival and courage in coming to terms with that very tragic loss of a husband in those circumstances. So there are a couple of things to look out for and coming up. And I would like to thank you all for giving up, a few hours on a Sunday afternoon to join us for, I hope, what's been an interesting and inspiring conversation with Ana. And if we could just, a few applause for Ana there. Thanks, Ana.
No.
I just want to finish with one question for you, Ana. You talked, you joked about having superhero powers. So what superhero powers do you think you've got now?
Inspirational power.
Inspirational power.
Yeah, I'm radioactive in inspiration and gratitude.
Radiating inspiration and gratitude. I think that's a really important superpower.
Brilliant.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I will say thank you very much to everybody. And it's been a real pleasure, Ana, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it and got something out of it.
Thank you everyone for making the time, and thank you, Phil, for organizing it.
Thank you. And there's some messages on the chat room for Ana.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ana.
Yeah.
Chat room.
All the best, Ana.
Yeah.
Thank you all for all of your kind wishes and comments, and for being here today.
Look, for those of you who want to hang around, I'll just very quickly, a few comments on the chat room. Thanks, Cheryl, for alerting me to that. Silvana says, thank you for sharing your life, Ana. Your life with us, Ana. Was there a point where you struggled discussing what happened because you were too emotional and overwhelmed to talk?
Today or in general?
I guess.
Yes,
in general.
many times. Yes, it is very overwhelming to talk about it sometimes, because you just go back to those to those sensations and emotions, that roller coaster, that emotional roller coaster that I went through. And what makes me emotional is to think, what if I couldn't be here? Like I always think as well, you know, Emilio, my friends, my family. So that's what makes me really emotional. But then at the same time, it makes me emotional that I'm so happy that I'm here and that I am, and that I made it, and that I'm so grateful for everyone who enabled that.
Yeah. I didn't see you reach for the tissues today, Anna.
It's here.
We should thank Rick too. Rick for his support. Yeah.
Yes.
Rick and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
These two people I wouldn't have even made one day without them, and my family and my friends, you know, it's just, and here and afar, you know, I just got messages nonstop getting me through. You know, that was part of the coping strategy, the love and the support of people.
I'll just read a couple out before we go. From Salan, thank you, Ana, for your gift of humanity, the potential of a human being, and how you have been able to inspire us. Keep up the good work with your amazing mindset and attitude. Thank you again.
Oh.
Cheryl says, muchas gracias, Ana, for amazing bravery and courage, for your generosity in sharing your intimate and personal story. We love you and your family and your little angel, Emilio, and we do.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And Silvana, thank you, Ana. It was very helpful hearing Ana's story. It's a personal story from Silvana, personal message. I know what that's about. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making this a special afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Ana. Thank you.
See ya.
Anna,
Anna, do you just hang in the room for a minute? We'll have a bit of a chat.
Sure.
Thank you. See everybody.
See everybody else. Bye.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining. How was that, Ana?
Excellent. Yeah, no, it was so good to hear that people enjoyed it as well, and that it was useful somehow, and that it was inspirational, which is always my main driver.
Hi, Rick.
Hola, sapo. Aquí está el sapo.
I'll stop.
Another one with super